Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. I'm here with Johnny Pascall, and we're going to be talking about his book, Sales Careers un, Unveiled. What's the
Unveiled. Unveiled.
Unveiled? Sorry, I'm reading. It's backwards for me. And what we're going to do is the thing about this book, Johnny, is there isn't another book like this. And the reason for that, and you know this, is that all the sales books out there are all about how to make cold calls or how to send emails or stuff like that. And actually, what you've done is you've written a book about why you should be a salesperson, which is fantastic. So before we get into it, tell people where they can get hold of you.
Amazon. Best place is Amazon. You can buy a paperback copy because you've got one in your hands there. There's also a Kindle edition. It's on Kindle Unlimited.
It's a different cover, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it's a different cover, but it's under the same heading. So if you type in Sales Careers Unveiled, you'll find it. It's on Amazon.com, Amazon.co.uk. It's on pretty much every Amazon. So there'll be a copy.
And where can we find you?
LinkedIn is probably the best place. There is an email address in the book, but the best place is LinkedIn. Johnathan Pascall. Please just send me an invite and send me a message. Happy to chat with everyone.
It's a really interesting journey that you went on, wasn't it? Because your dad was in sales. So he actually was your mentor. I mean, what you say is that what would happen is your dad would be going out on sales and he'd come out and he'd tell you all about it.
Absolutely the case. Yeah, in summer school holidays, if you had a journey to go and visit someone or something like that, I'd quite often go and sit in the car, go on the car journey with him. Obviously wait in the car while he did his meetings and then come back in. Of course, we talk about it. I am very lucky to have a great relationship with my father. It's more like a friendship. And so growing and really the salient point is that what I go into in the book is that I was really lucky. I mean, I was one of the few people I'm aware of that chose sales as a career to go into. Most people, when you ask, why did you go into sales? It's I just sort of fell into it, really. I didn't want to be a doctor or wasn't qualified enough to be a doctor, lawyer, whatever. So, I sort of found myself in sales, whereas I chose to go into sales and benefited from the experience, the wisdom, the insights, the mentoring and coaching, although we clearly didn't use those words because it's a father and son relationship, but the mentoring and coaching I got from having a family member who was in sales.
Because my father wasn't in sales. So I didn't have any of that sort of. In fact, my parents pretty much worked for the public sector, so they didn't really even understand motives of profit or, I'm going to sell something and I'm going to make some money, that sort of thing. So having that guide, I think is and having that forethought is fantastic.
Yeah, it is. And I think one of the things I'm trying to do in the book as well is give people an honest, slightly positive, but honest insight into what day-to-day life, week-to-week life is like in sales. Because if you haven't worked in sales, you probably, and particularly if you're yet to join the professional community, you're a student or recent graduate, that most likely your perception of what being a salesperson is, what the life is like, what the job is like, it's probably been more shaped by what you see on television or in Hollywood movies. And that is not at all what it's like. It's not like The Apprentice. And so I think what happens is that puts a lot of people off going into sales. People who would have a brilliant career, who would add a lot to the companies they work for, the economy, who would benefit, personal growth, have a great time doing it. They don't go into it. They go into something else. Or other side of that coin, you get people who maybe shouldn't go into sales going into it, the people with the gift of the gab and this kind of stuff. So that's part of what I'm trying to do in the book is explain actually what it's like from someone who's been doing it for 20 years, someone who's benefited from, the 40 odd years career of my father, someone who's got lots of colleagues who also collaborated in the book, I should also add.
So who's the book aimed at?
Primarily, it's aimed at people who are yet to pick a career. People who aren't going down the doctor, engineer, lawyer route, who've been to college, university, maybe are thinking of sales, or maybe not at all. And hate to use a cliche like this, but for price for a cup of coffee, you can find out actually what it's like, what you need to have a successful career and do well in the job and to enjoy it, and to work out if it's the right thing for you or not.
Yeah, I think we do a lot of work with Institute of Sales Professionals, and one of the people that set it up is a guy called Andy Huff, and he goes around schools talking about why you should be in sales. And one of the first questions he asks people is, who in the audience here wants to be in sales? And nobody puts their hand up. because their idea about it is formed by, as you said, what you see on the TV, or The Apprentice or something like that. Whereas you have that 20 years of mentorship from your father, where he explained to you what it is, and you share it beautifully in here, in terms of, if anybody's thinking of going into sales or whatever, read this book, is my view. And you go into all kinds of details about territories, the difference between selling to big companies and small companies, where there is a difference. Let me just look at the tech sales, and so you pick off a number of the if we work through this, you pick up a number of things like the different sales roles. What is an SDR, what is an AE, and what you should do. Do you want to have a quick comment about that?
You've nailed it, and it's part of what I was talking about, trying to explain what it's like. And if you think you're going to sales, or the book persuades you to investigate it further, what are you likely to be doing for the first few years? Or what are you likely or possibly could choose to do after the first few years? The first few years is a bit like working as an apprentice. But the other thing about sales is business to business sales we'll talk about here, but even within business to business, there's so many different industries, there's so many different types of sales job, there's so many different sizes and types of company to work for. And I would say it's a mistake not to chart your own course, to know what these key factors or key ingredients of a brilliant start to your career where you're going to do well, you're going to enjoy yourself, and you're going to be on the right pathway. You can always course correct as you progress. But what a missed opportunity if you're not aware of these things ahead of time. If you can identify what might be right for you, what's probably right for you, and go about setting goals and to go down the right path for you, to know what it is. How else would you know that? I mean, literally, how else would you know that unless someone explained it to you? And most people don't have that until now.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started in sales, I was told I was too young, which would, at 27 something, would amaze people. And then I was told I had to get to sell to public sector, because nobody within the private sector in a classic B2B would want somebody so young. And one of the things that you do is you talk about the different types of industries. So tech, manufacturing, service, the difference between large corporates and SMB, small and medium market businesses, or SMBs. And all of them are quite different, aren't they?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, you'll typically, I mean, this is a bit of a generalization now, but you'll typically have a completely different experience if you go and work for perhaps not a startup, but you go and work for a company with 500 people versus working for the likes of someone like Microsoft or Salesforce with 100,000 people. On the one hand, going down the big corporate route is great because you get all of that training, that experience of working for a big organization, which is both good and bad. But the bad is key lessons learned particularly when you're younger. But you'll typically be doing a lot less. Your role will be a lot smaller. You won't be as hands-on for much longer. Whereas if you go for that smaller company, the role is typically going to be bigger, but more responsibility is going to be on your own shoulders to find out what you need to be doing. And that part of the challenge there is because you don't know what you should know. Which is part of what I go into in the book, which is, regardless if you do go down the massive corporate route, it's still great to be aware of what you need to proactively do to maximize those first few years and put your career on the best possible footing.
Yeah, I mean, selling into public sector or selling into manufacturing is very different. And as you say, going in to talk about startups, I started off in actually working at a corporate where I got loads of training, and then I worked for a small company, and they are just so different.
Yeah.
Because as you say, with a small company, you're shouldering so much more responsibility.
Absolutely are. And it's about, there's no right and wrongs. I mean, there are there are things you should do and shouldn't do in your career, but regards choices, there are no right ones other than what's right for you and what you want out of it, and where you'll think you'll best fit in and be able to do well and feel comfortable and enjoy what you're doing. So that's a big part of it. As a big part, I spent a lot of time, I think, talking about that, and talking as well about the values that you should cultivate in yourself to do well in sales, and the skills on top of that. I don't, not so much the skills in terms of the cold calling, presenting, negotiating, because that will come, but the personality traits, the characteristics, which we're all born with these things, but we can absolutely develop, cultivate, nurture the right kinds of ones. So I do talk quite a lot about that, because for me, it's a big part. I mean, sales is about people, business is about people, and sales absolutely is about people. And people have brilliant BS radar. And there's an expression, there's a great expression. I can't remember who said it, but it's, I can't hear what you're saying because who you are is speaking too loudly. And I think, you can say all the right words, but somehow people, through presumably millions of years of evolution, we can just detect someone who just is trying to rip us off, or doesn't know what they're doing, or doesn't care, all of that kind of stuff. We can just tell. So that comes from within yourself. So, and that's a huge topic in itself. Probably don't want to go into too much detail on that, but that is a key topic that I think is a massively underestimated, undervalued, and under discussed in sort of in sales training or conversations to do with sales.
You also do. You also talk about typical days, which I think is a really nice way of visualizing, a day in the life of an account executive. And I think it's a really nice way of getting someone, what exactly would I expect it to do? And you do put morning, midday, afternoon, and evening. So you are setting your stall out that isn't this. That if you're in sales, it probably isn't a 9-to-5 job.
Not if you want to get the most out of it. In my, that's my experience, my opinion. So everyone can take it or leave it, but it isn't. And at the end, I don't want to beat around the bush, and I haven't done in the book. And brutally honest, it's tough having a quota or a sales target over your head. It doesn't go away. It's there in the back of your mind at weekends and the evenings. If you go on holiday, vacation, it's still there. So it is tough. The upside of that is you develop skills, phenomenal skills of self-reliance, responsibility, attitude, which there aren't many careers outside of the military services, I think, that don't cultivate those kind of characteristics. So it's tough, but it's very, very rewarding. And of course, it also, the financial rewards are also great. I think that is steering a little bit down what we talked about earlier, of the people going into the wrong reasons. The people I know that make $1 million a year in sales, ironically, aren't that money motivated. They're not chasing money. The money comes, but it's because they're pursuing other things, and that's a sort of byproduct. The same way, I guess, if you try and chase happiness, you don't get it, because happiness is a byproduct of doing other things. So yeah, I think these things are absolutely essential.
I think sometimes I was out with a friend of mine the other week, and she sells to the public sector. And I said to her, why do you do this? She said, there's great purpose in this. I said, what, selling CRM systems to the public sector? She said, yes. She said, by our CRM systems help take criminals off the street. They help people get access to their benefits quicker, or whatever the thing is. So, and I think sometimes people think that it's about flogging stuff, and actually you can find purpose in the stuff that you're the organizations that you're working for. It's not just about, I'm going to sell something and I'm going to make some commission.
Yeah, I think that is such a good point and so well put. This might sound a bit corny to some people, particularly people that don't work in sales, but I can't think there aren't many industries or jobs where you get the opportunity to do so much good. If you go about picking an industry which is important to you, and that could be anything, working in life sciences and healthcare, whatever it is, and you work for the right kind of company that has something that does good, if you think of working for, just to pick a more extreme example, but imagine there's some sort of startup that's got some amazing health tech product, which will save people's lives, will give hours back to a hardworking clinician every single day, will save money for hospitals. But it's a startup. It needs somebody to go out there and sell it. And if they have the wrong kind of salesperson, it does a really bad job. That company is probably going to die. Eventually, the funding will run out because there isn't customers paying. But if you have a really good salesperson, that technology then has the opportunity to flourish where it wouldn't have done before. So 100% is the opportunity to do so much more good than you would in most of the roles.
You talk also about facing failure and challenges, the thrill of success, and facing common obstacles and stuff like that. And the fact that, ultimately not everybody is going to buy from you, and therefore you are going to lose sales, and how you come to terms with that.
Yeah, and it's just a reality. It's a reality, isn't it? And you can't have success without failure. I mean, the concept, you can't feel the rewarding feeling, the great joyful feeling of success without knowing that there's the failure and having experience there to go along. And it's part of what we talked about earlier with sales being so tough. Sometimes you can do all the right, absolutely know you've done all the right things in the right way, et cetera, but you don't win the sale for whatever, all sorts of potential reasons. You cannot hit your sales target for reasons that are totally not out of your control. That will happen at some point in your career, probably more than once. And that's just part of the, I was going to say tough shit, but I don't want to swear on your podcast.
It's all right. It's all right. I've had people say worse words than that.
I'll limit myself to that one. But yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's not fair. The world is not fair, and so that's what you experience in sales. But at the end of the day, and plus you're held responsible. It can be any number of things, and it can happen on a day-to-day basis. You're driving to see a prospect, you hit really bad traffic, you're going to be a bit late. Someone phones you up and tells you your dog's died. You feel an absolute wreck emotionally and physically when you get there, but no one really cares. It's right. Okay, what have you got for us? Go, showtime. And you've got to learn to put all of that behind you and do the best you possibly can do then and there. And that, that's a small example. That it works on a bigger scale. You can get made redundant in your career you're doing a great job. You're hitting your targets. You're really popular. You're doing all the right things. You get made redundant. How are you going to handle that?
Yeah, and you also talk about some of the personality traits like emotional intelligence and self-awareness, because what was the quote that you said earlier on about the personality getting in the way of your questions?
Yeah.
If you're trying to close a deal and your prospect turns around and says, "I'm really sorry, but my dog's died," then you need to be empathetic about that and not just say, "I really understand about your dog, but when are you going to sign the contract?"
Yeah, it's absolutely, and it's people buy from people. That's probably one of the oldest mantras, I guess, in sales training. But it's true. I mean, that's probably the sales training schools in Roman times, they were teaching that lesson. And in 1,000 years, it'll still be the same because people are people, and they want to trust the person they're doing business with, and they want to ideally like the person, and they want to believe that the person they're speaking with knows what they're doing. So no matter what's going on in your life or their life, you've got to find a way to reconcile those different sort of things, if that makes sense.
It does, and I just wanted to pick up quickly as we're kind of running out of time. You also talk about how sales, you need to think about sales as a career, and how to actually start tracking your own progress through the what are you going to do in the next 5 or 10 years, And I think that's fabulous in the way that you talk about that. Do you want to just...
Yeah, no, thank you. You touched on this and you put it very beautifully at the start, although I can't actually remember what you said, but I remember thinking no one's going to care about your career anywhere near as much as you are. And at the end of the day, sales is all about responsibility. You can't rely on other people caring as much about your success as you. And, that is one of the key points I think I repeatedly make in the book. So take your career as seriously as you're taking turning up for work and doing the best job you can do each day, because no one's going to do it for you. People will help you. We talk about that in the book, about mentors and all the rest of it. 100% you will get a lot of support, but only if you plot the course yourself and know what to ask and how to ask it.
Johnny, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book, Sales Careers Unveiled. It's a great book if you're thinking about moving into sales, or maybe you've got a son or a daughter or who are thinking about going into sales. It's great. So where can I get a copy of this?
Go on Amazon, type in Sales Careers Unveiled, and it'll come right up. The other thing is, if people want to ask me any questions at all, just drop me a message on LinkedIn. Please do.
Thank you so much for coming on and talk about it.
Absolutely, my pleasure.